Greetings, salutations to Safe to Serve International and first-time viewers. Welcome to this midday power surge, your spiritual oasis on this pilgrim journey. I'm your host, Andrew Henriquez. Welcome one, welcome all to this midday power surge. Let's move on, my friends. By God's grace, we are going to be addressing several themes, and I do have a guest today, Marie Diaz from Eyes on the Times. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you so much for having me, Pastor. It's great to be back.
We have a lot to cover today. Let's get right into it. So let me roll out the several themes we'll be covering today. Number one, the Cowboy Catholic, Kevin Roberts from the Heritage Foundation, is now calling for a uniformed day of rest on Sunday, a uniformed day of worship on Sunday, a Sunday law in America. That's number one. Number two, we will be addressing the fact that now laws are being placed on the books in America that we must give up our biometrics. No buying without it, no selling without it, no travel, no transaction with anyone, nor with the government without it. A one app for all government services. These are signs of the last days. And of course, a few more things that we'll be covering as well. Marie, let's get right into it, shall we?
Yes, of course.
So the breaking news that is now trending is Kevin Roberts, the Cowboy Catholic, from the Heritage Foundation. And Marie, I'm going to read a few sentences here from the actual report that was published on January 8, 2026. That was yesterday, with a headline stating, "Saving America by Saving the Family, a foundation for the next 250 years," with some authors and co-authors. On page 38, the words in the red box, the tagline, the theme says, "Support for a uniform day of rest." I want to get your take on that one title, subtitle, Marie. A support for a uniform day of rest. It goes on to state a few lines, and I get your take on this. It says, as zoning laws allow a community to determine where one can operate certain businesses, quote unquote, blue laws reflect the local judgments as to when one can operate certain businesses. In the case of McGowan versus Maryland in 1961, the Supreme Court held by an 8-1 vote that Sunday closing laws that include the purpose of providing a uniform day of rest are constitutional and can accommodate the fact that the majority of people who take a day of rest for religious reasons do so on Sundays. Now, Marie, let me just give you one more paragraph and then we can wrap this up. The third paragraph in that red box states, listen attentively, a uniform day of rest that limits commercial activity can provide temporal boundaries that help communities to set aside time for religious observance. There it is. Family gatherings, etc., etc. Take rest. Marie, to that you say what?
Well, Pastor, this is what Adventists have been talking about for years, that a Sunday law was going to, eventually be passed. And we're seeing how, the Cowboy Catholic, the Catholic system is behind this, uniting with the Protestant churches to push a Sunday law here in America. And we know that the Sunday law is first going to take place here. So although this is surprising, it's not surprising because the Bible foretells that these things are going to happen. The question really is, are we as God's people prepared for what we know is going to take place?
And we'll say more about this on tomorrow, but what about the title, Marie, a uniformed day of rest?
Well, of course, with a uniform day of rest, it means that everyone has to rest on the same day on Sunday, right? And, this is counterintuitive, especially when you consider the fact that there are so many individuals who are of different not race, religions, right? And also people who don't express any religion and how they are going to be forced to rest on a singular day. And we know based on the rhetoric that has been coming out that we're going to have to rest on Sunday, not on the seventh day Sabbath, which is, commonly referred to as Friday evening at sunset to Saturday at sunset, or even on Fridays, which is a day that Muslims choose to rest. We know that it's going to be on Sundays.
Now, Marie, my take on the uniform, that word, operative word, uniform day of rest and a uniform day for worship. I believe, let us connect these dots here. I believe that Kevin Roberts, the Cowboy Catholic, is a great deceiver. Remember, it is the Heritage Foundation that oversees Project 2025. Marie, just remind us, what did Kevin Roberts and Jonathan Berry say about day of rest in America that they want to revise the federal labor standard laws? Marie.
Well, Jonathan Berry said emphatically that he wanted to set aside this uniform day of rest so that people aren't just resting, but for the purpose of going to church to worship. And so it's not just resting. Again, I'm reiterating myself, right? But it's so that everyone will be able to worship.
Safe to Serve Local, Safe to Serve International. Do you all recall in that same book, the same manual for leadership in America, Trump administration, and any other, even the Donkey Party, Jonathan Berry, Kevin Roberts stated that they are going to give allowance, accommodation for the Sabbath from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset. So they say one thing in the manual, but now they give another rhetoric. You can't say a uniform day of rest, a uniform day for worship. Uniform means one day. One day. That means this document that just came out on yesterday, it trumps, pun intended, it trumps that statement in Project 2025 that they will give accommodation for Sabbath keepers, Seventh-day Adventists, Seventh-day Sabbath keepers. These men are very deceptive. So they say one thing just to get their foot in the door. Yes, we'll give allowances, but in their hearts, they know that they are going to remove that allowance, remove that accommodation, and only promote Sunday rest by law, Sunday worship by law. And every other person must comply or be prosecuted because it's a law, be fined financially, penalized, be thrown in jail, in prison. That's exactly what this means. In other words, Kevin Roberts has removed the wool, the sheep's clothing. Now we are seeing, my friends, the wolf being exposed. Marie.
Yes. And, in addition to that, when you look historically, you see that they did the exact same thing, right? They tried to introduce both. And of course, we know that one was demoted and the other one was promoted. And so this is no surprise. And for those who aren't studying the Word of God, they're going to be deceived in thinking that we're still going to be able to retain our religious liberties when, of course, the Bible tells us contrary to that.
I want to add one more thing to that. And I'm going to share with the audience and remind Safe to Serve Local and Safe to Serve International what Kevin Roberts once said on the screen. Did America have a Christian founding? Kevin Roberts is promoting a historical time period in America where laws were promoted to punish Sabbath breakers, to punish Sunday breakers. It's right there on the screen. And now he's pushing for a uniform day of rest and worship on Sunday. we can expect then punishment, even a death decree, fulfilling Revelation chapter 13, verse 15 through verse 17. And remember, Kevin Roberts also said that Trump will implement Project 2025. On the screen, that is what was written in Project 2025, that they will give accommodation for Sabbath, Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. But now we have Kevin Roberts verbally has been stating that they're only pushing what Emperor Constantine promoted, which was Sunday worship by law. These men are deceivers. On the screen, they will strike terror in the hearts of Seventh-day Adventists when they promote Sunday worship by law. Marie.
Yes. And Pastor, I'm just watching all of these things, and I tremble as I hear these things. And what's interesting is that we know that while we're simultaneously seeing how the Sunday movement, the religions are uniting, they're promulgating this idea of legislating Sunday laws, agitations all over the place. We have to know that at the same time, the system in which to enforce the Sunday law has to be also coming to prominence, because otherwise the Sunday law itself would be without a way to enforce it, would be toothless. And so we're seeing both happening. And the last thing that I want to mention is the fact that when you look at the cover of the article from Heritage, they're making reference to, the fact that we're about to celebrate 250 years. And it's also interesting that in this year, 2026, in June of this year, they plan to have a celebration in which they're bringing religious leaders, and they're going to do some sort of religious function right there in Washington, D.C. I'm not saying that the Sunday law is going to be passed then or even this year. I'm just saying, look at everything that's happening at the same time, piece by piece, moment by moment. And I'm just hoping that, we're going to awaken to what's happening before us.
Okay. So let's get into what you just referenced about the mark of the beast system, the Sunday law system. All right. Mm-hmm. Before I go there, I want to connect this midday power surge with everything that was shared from Monday to yesterday. What President Trump, America is doing with the military, and how America and its military are repeating the very steps of ancient Babylon. And modern Babylon is linked with America and her military. And ancient Babylon forced people to worship or die. Modern Babylon will force people to worship or die. So just as we see in the military arena, now we're seeing in the policy making arena. We want Sunday worship by law, a uniform day of rest, a uniform day of worship. Now, you are shaking your head, Marie. That means you have a point, because we want to get into the mark of the beast system. Go ahead.
Not really, Pastor. Just the fact that, again, if you go back to Matthew chapter 24, it tells us that all of these things are going to take place. You're going to see things happening on the global scale war. Then it talks about internal wars, then you're hearing calamities and then persecution. So, it's just following the line, so, prophecy, it's amazing, seeing it fulfill.
Okay, Marie, so they put you in a white suit here. Mm-hmm. All right. Mm-hmm. We can talk to Richard afterwards about that, what design that is. And we're talking about how will they know, Marie, who is compliant to Kevin Roberts' policy, who is compliant to the government's policy to push a uniformed day for worship. How will they know who is compliant and who is non-compliant? They need a digital-only society. Let's talk about this, Marie. Biometric, sure. Give it up right now. No buying, no selling. It comes to America. One app for all government services. Marie, take it away.
Right, Pastor, as you alluded to, just this idea that there has to be some sort of biometric system. And, for Americans, for a long time, we have settled ourselves in this idea that nothing, no one can infringe on our freedoms. We're going to go step by step and prove that the same system that they have over there in China in the Panda Nation is being implemented here in a kind of de facto way. So let's jump right into this. So the first thing I want to do is I want you to see how they began implementing this biometric system here in America. We're going to kind of breeze through this first segment here, but I want you to take a listen to a clip of Kristi Noem, who obviously is a part of this current administration. And what they've done is they've set aside $1 billion to set up a new aviation security system. And they're modernizing it. And of course, the purpose is to address this immigration crisis. Now, all of these pieces are going to make sense. We're just, like I said, we're going to lay the foundation. So let's take a listen to this first clip.
Here it is.
I wanted to come and be with all of you today to talk about the fact that we as the Department of Homeland Security are going to be investing over $1 billion in new technology and new advancements in the security systems at security checkpoints in airports across the country. That is the biggest investment that we've seen in screening technologies in years, in over a decade. And we know that it is our responsibility not just to keep travelers safe, but also to make sure that we're getting them to their locations and to their destinations safely, on time, and efficiently, and also in a manner that can be pleasant and can be an enjoyable experience for them and for their families.
Marie.
So right off the bat, I just want to make it clear that we aren't opposed to enhancing, security. I think that's very important. But the point is that they're starting to establish the digital infrastructure. And a part of that digital infrastructure is incorporating biometrics. And we're going to eventually see how it's going to become invasive. And right now, of course, they're addressing non-citizens. But of course, we know that that same system can be redirected and used on American citizens. So let's take a look at the following two articles. And this one's from ABC News. It says, new DHS policy to collect biometric data for non-citizens to prevent visa fraud and overstay. Now let's take a look at the next article. It says passports, tickets, social media history. The U.S. authority has issued proposals to demand access to 5 years of your activity on Instagram, Facebook, and of course, all of the social media platforms. It goes on to say whether you're a football fan or if your family is heading to Florida or just a traveler to New York or wherever, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection wants to examine details of your social media history, right? And it goes on to say there is even provision for demanding DNA from applicants. Think of how invasive that is, right? And also it says that they have the capability, right, to use geolocation, right? And that's so that they can determine exactly where you are. Because remember, if you have individuals who are crossing the border and they're staying longer than they're supposed to, they have to be able to find you. And of course, they have liveness detection software, which they can use to determine if you're actually taking a live video. And as I mentioned previously, of course, this same system can be used on U.S. citizens. And the other thing I want to mention is the fact that they're building this database, right? They're getting all of this biometric system and it's being put into a system which is gathering all of our information. I don't know if you want to jump in here. If not, we can move on.
Move on.
Okay, so now here is where we're going to start seeing some of the implications for us that are living in the US. Now, I want us to realize that they are taking biometrics from us, and some of us don't even realize it. Let's take a look at this first headline here. It says, popular grocery store chain uses biometric surveillance on shoppers, raising concerns, privacy concerns. Let's take a look at the next headline. It says, New York City Wegmans storing shoppers' facial scans and biometric data to ID customers and, of course, to boost security. Now, I have to tell you, off the bat, I'm a little hurt at this revelation because Wegmans is huge here in the Northeast and along, the East Coast. It's comparable to, Publix and to like Whole Foods. So this is a big deal. And we're about to listen to a video clip, but when you listen to it, they talk about the fact that there are only 5 states in which the government has to tell you that they're taking your biometrics. And so right now you could be going to a plethora of stores and they're taking your, facial recognition, eye scans, even your voice ID. And eventually that data can be used against you. So let's take a listen to the first video clip here so you can see what's happening.
Here it is.
A grocery store taking customer surveillance to a whole new level. There's a store here in New York City. It's called Wegmans. I'd never heard of it in South Carolina, but I shop there now. Warning shoppers of technology collecting, storing, and even sharing biometric data, such as facial recognition and eye scans. Kurt, the cyber guy, joins us now. Okay, Kurt, they're doing this so that they can recognize if you're a terrorist or if you've committed a crime. They know which customers to watch.
There are only about 4 other states in the country that require companies like this to let you know that they're collecting your biometric data. And that means you're going to be walking into stores without any protection. You won't have any idea whether your face, your eyes, or possibly even your voice is being collected as you simply go grocery shopping. It's a new trend for loss protection and to really understand how we're shopping in the stores. They're going to use all kinds of ways to justify their Big Brother activity. But privacy experts here warning this really shouldn't be normalized for the kind of surveillance that it's doing.
Marie.
And see, the issue here is that they're collecting all sorts of data, right? Again, which is intrusive, it's invasive. The fact that they can monitor your shopping habits, when and where you shop, what days you shop, and again, you're going to see how all of this information is going to be layered and it's going to be put into a system and it's going to create kind of a spreadsheet on you as an individual. So some people may say, well, I don't care. I have nothing to hide. You will care if you understand where all of this is tending.
Continue.
So now the real question is, based on Bible prophecy, where all of this is tending, right? And of course, we know that for those of us who are commandment keeping people, eventually the day is going to come, because if you listen carefully to what she said in the clip, she says that they're looking to identify terrorists and, of course, people who have committed crimes, right? We know based on Bible prophecy that God's people are going to go contrary to the laws of the land, laws that are unlawful in comparison to what God is telling us to do. And so they're going to establish a system where you won't be able to buy and sell. Now, this may seem far-fetched, like something in the near future, but I want you to take a look at another video clip. And this is coming from Amazon, who is now in control of Whole Foods, what they're implementing in several of their stores. Take a look at this.
Here it is.
And then you do your left palm.
Okay.
It's not a TSA checkpoint or the entrance to a high security area.
Enter the phone number linked to that Amazon account.
It's grocery shopping at Whole Foods, 5 years after it was bought by Amazon for $13.7 billion. This palm scanning payment option is one big change the tech giant has brought to Whole Foods. It's already in 20 stores, and it's rolling out to 65 more soon.
Marie.
Just the thought, that they've already rolled this out in 22 stores. Now, if you looked at the video, you see that they already have the capabilities of barring you from coming into the store. And I'm just imagining the day that's going to come where I'm going to go to the grocery store and they say, for whatever reason, that I'm no longer able to shop there. And these are the things that we have to start thinking about ahead of time. What are you going to do if you're not planning in advance to be able to address this issue? What's going to happen on that day where they bar you from being able to go into the stores? We have to have some sort of alternative. And this is why we've been told through the Bible and the spirit of prophecy that we are to become self-sufficient. We're supposed to get out of the city because this is the trajectory, and I think unfortunately, because it's happening in piecemeal, many of us aren't seeing it.
It's time to implement the 5 keys of survival. I want to put 3 points on our desktop, as it were. Don't forget them. We'll come back to them. Airport, grocery stores, DNA. Airport, grocery store, DNA. Don't forget those 3 things. And a quick illustration. Many of us have driven around town and we saw them building or erecting a building. Overnight, that building is not erected. You drive past daily, they bring in cement. They bring in blocks, bricks. The workers are there. And over a period of time, days, weeks, maybe a month or 2, the building is fully erected and services begin in that office building. In a spiritual sense, we know what the end goal is based on end-time prophecy, the mark of the beast crisis. So what are we now seeing? We are seeing the parts the pieces being brought to the actual site, as it were. The site is America, the nations. They're bringing in the pieces and they're putting them together. Only those who understand end-time prophecy will see what the end goal is. Marie.
It's interesting that you use that example. I often thought about that with the 3 Hebrew boys in Daniel chapter 3. They had to see the image being erected, right? And remember, they had interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And so for us, again, knowing that the image is going to be formed, knowing that there's going to be Sunday laws instituted, as we're seeing all of these pieces, fall into place, it should alarm each and every one of us.
Before you go any further, no. I was thinking about, because that point you made a while ago needs to be emphasized and re-emphasized. That statue was about 90 feet high, 90 feet tall. 90 feet? 90 feet? Imagine every day you're passing by, you're seeing it, and you're thinking, what is this for? What is this for? The Hebrews understood because God had told it to Hezekiah over a century before what was coming in Babylon. Because if you are oh my friend, God told Hezekiah, slavery is coming over a century before, approximately 120 years before. Slavery is not only physical, slavery is also spiritual. So the Hebrews knew what was coming, especially when they saw Daniel chapter 1 with the health crisis. And now we're seeing the pandemic that just passed, as it were, brought in track and trace, right? Track and trace. And here we are. Give up your biometrics. Give up your voice biometric. Everything. Track and trace. The pieces have come to the site, and now we're seeing the erection of the mark of the beast system. Marie.
Pastor, I think of how few were ready for that crisis. As you stated, many of them knew it was coming, but how few? There were only 3 that stood, and so it's frightening to, think of the implications. But let's take a look here, and we're going to transition again. We're going to see how they are stepping it up a notch, and this is startling to think that an employer is actually doing this. Let's take a look at this next article here. It says, JP Morgan makes biometric data compulsory at new headquarters. Mercy. So just in case you don't know it, JP Morgan Chase is the largest bank, not just in America, but in the world. So put that into perspective. How much clout and influence must this bank have, and they're wielding? And so imagine they're setting the trend for all of the other for everyone else in the banking industry. So let's take a look at this next article here. It says, JP Morgan Chase has told staff moving into the new headquarters in New York that they must share their biometric data to access the multi-billion-dollar building. And of course, they initially said that this system was going to be voluntary, but recently, I guess they sent out emails saying that now it is required. And so I just want you to see what type of biometrics that's being included. It says biometric access requires staff to scan their fingerprints or eye to gain access through security gates into the lobby. And of course, this is as opposed to using your badge. And so again, think about it in these terms from a biblical perspective, right? No biometrics, no work. Right. And again, I'm not trying to be fanatical. There's nothing wrong with providing your biometrics because, again, this is not a matter of conscience. But what I'm saying to you is that this is the trajectory. Right. And of course, we're basing this on Bible prophecy. And the Bible tells us that at some point, our freedoms, our liberties, our rights to be able to buy and sell and to go to work and to function, right, is going to be restricted.
Marie, two things. That's the movies. I remember watching movies. To enter the building, eye scan. To enter, you're in the building. To enter a particular department, eye scan, iris scan, biometrics. Now, you said a very important point. You don't want to sound fanatical because you're not a fanatic nor an extremist. Praise the Lord. However, is there a constitutional amendment that says in order to get my biometrics, you also need a judge-approved warrant? So So what happens when we just flippantly just share our biometrics all over the place? Not only iris scan, not only finger scan, but now voice biometric and your DNA. DNA. To get my DNA, either I give it to you voluntarily or what? You have to get a court-ordered warrant to get that. But these things you have to give up or no work. And that's why we need to implement the 5 keys of survival.
Right. And I just want to emphasize that again. So we began talking about how the government is curating your data, as far as travel is concerned, right? Your DNA, social media. In that article, it also referenced even family history. The grocery store is aggregating your shopping habits, where and when you shop, your purchasing history, right? And now your employer is digitalizing your biometric as it relates to your job. So that has to do with your work history, right? And now, if you think about that, if you combine all of that data, in addition to all of the other things that we're going to be discussing in this, it gives them a perfect picture of you. So do you see how Satan is developing this biometric system, as you stated, all around us? And so now we're going to delve into the financial system. So let's take a look at a few articles here, right?
We are being surrounded, yes.
Absolutely are. And of course, remember that JP Morgan Chase also not only represents, the financial system, but it's the banking and employer system, right? So it's twofold. And, Sister White also talks about how monopolies are going to be established. And so you see how these systems that are at the helm are setting the stage for all of the other industries that are smaller and beneath them. So in this first article here, it says the U.S. Treasury awards ID.me $1 billion 5-year contract, right? It says in a significant development for digital ID verification across U.S. federal agencies, ID.me has secured several notable contracts with the U.S. government departments. And of course, they enumerate several departments, the Treasury, IRS, Medicare and Medicaid services. And it also talks about how their footprint is expanding, going as far as to Veteran Affairs and also to the Social Security Administration. And then it goes on to say that they're going to have access from data ranging from tax filings all the way to healthcare. So you see how all of the various sectors are being covered here. Let's look at another article so that you will be able to see what the issue is as they're pooling all of this data into one system. It says when you log into the IRS account this tax season, you'll likely have to use ID.me to verify your identity. This service scoops up a huge pool of personal data that police and other authorities can tap into.
Without
consent.
Without a warrant. Continue.
Correct. It says a possible collaboration between the IRS and the startup ID.me is alarming privacy experts and civil rights activists, advocates who say the partnership will create a massive new pool of sensitive personal data that can be tapped, of course, again, by police and so on and so forth. Now, what I really want to get into is how they obtain this information. It says, so they use facial recognition and also this liveness detection on pictures, and they compare it with other data, right? From telecommunications, from credit card bureaus, from financial institutions. And then it goes on to say something about this inferred citizenship, right? Which is based on your passport information, facial images, voice prints, location data, your address, social security number, your driver's license. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So what I really want your audience to gather is the fact that all of your information is being put in one place. And as we go through this presentation, you're going to see how they're going to have the power to manipulate that data.
In volume 9 and page 11, the agencies of evil are combining their forces. They are consolidating. They are strengthening for the last great crisis. Great changes are soon to take place in our world, and the final movements will be rapid ones. But I thought that we would have a digital ID. What is this? What is this? And notice, do you realize what Trump did on September 30? When he phased out paper, how you transact with the government and how counties, states transact with the government. Marie, take it away. We are here.
Exactly, right? In case people don't know what you're referring to, he phased out paper checks from the government. So those who would still receive benefits, retirement benefits, if you still receive your income tax return, you will no longer be able to get that in a check form. They're transitioning us to this digital biometric system, which is the perfect segue, right? Because we see how, the Treasury covers, the IRS, the payment infrastructure. And so if they are modernizing these systems that support the financial system and they're incorporating, biometrics, logically, the system, the financial system also has to be modernized, right? And of course, because if you really think about it, you can't have an archaic system and a modern biometric digital system, like they're incompatible. And so the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we hearing where this administration or maybe current former administrations have been putting things into place to modernize this system? And I'm going to tell you that, they have put this into place. Let's take and listen to this following clip where President Trump is going to tell you that they're going to get rid of the old system and they're introducing a new financial system.
Do you mean a new world order, a new American order?
Absolutely.
I'm asking.
Absolutely.
Listen, here it is.
Many Americans are unaware that behind the scenes, the technical backbone of the financial system is decades out of date, many, many years out of date. You know that. Paul and others are straightening it out, but payments and money transfers are costly and take days or even weeks to clear. Under this bill, the entire ancient system will be eligible for a 21st century upgrade using the state-of-the-art crypto technology. Who would have thought we would have been saying that?
Marie.
So Pastor, he just confirmed that our current system is decades out of date and that we are undergoing. He didn't say it's going to happen or, this is something way off in the future. He says we are undergoing, a change, right? And of course, he talked about this crypto technology. And we've talked about this ad nauseum, the fact that they introduced the Genius Act, and that includes the stablecoin legislation within that very bill. And for those of you that don't know it, who have been concerned with a CBDC, the stable coins to a great degree is worse than a CBDC. Why? Because it's privatized, right? And there's less oversight, less regulation. And so they're able to manage and manipulate the stable coins. And so everything is being upgraded to this new digital system.
Continue.
All right. So now we're going to shift gears, right? And you're going to see how being government dependent puts you at a disadvantage. And again, I want to reiterate the point that I am, this is not a matter of conscience and we're not trying to scare people. We're simply trying to show how the system is being erected around us. And so as you're seeing these things happen, that you have to make the necessary preparation to prepare yourself for when they tell you that you have to go contrary to your conscience. We're told that we should study nature. And one of the things that I have learned is that when a spider weaves her web, right? Did you know that the outer layers of the web doesn't have the sticky glue in it, right? And so when you think about this, right, think of how this biometric system that's being put into place, it's kind of like you're on the outer edges of the web. And the longer you hold on to it, the more entrenched you become into the system, the harder it is to escape. And so the point that I'm really driving is that you have to start seeing these things coming into place, and you have to start making preparations now, whatever that looks like, prayer, fasting, just packing, doing whatever you can to make yourself or put yourself in a position so that God can work on your behalf. But like I said, in this clip, you're going to see how those who are government dependent, you have to submit your biometrics. This is what they're currently working on. And again, it adds another layer into this system. So let's take a listen to this clip here.
Here it is. The warmonger. Who would have thought that Lindsey Graham will be a part of this system, pushing it, promoting it, supporting it? Lindsey Graham.
I want to go after welfare fraud. I want to rewrite the way the programs work. I want to make sure that every state before they get $1 for food stamps or any form of welfare, that they send biometrics to the federal government proving that the person exists and they're eligible for the services in question.
Mercy. It's clear. Marie.
It is. It is clear. And, Pastor, this is just one stipulation. But what's going to happen when they add another stipulation, when they say you have to get a certain inoculation, when they say you can't, shop or go certain places? At some point, you got to get off of the system or you're going to yield to it. And, Sister White tells us, she talks about those who have yielded step by step, to the worldly demands. And so if you're seeing that you can't stop now, what are you going to do when the mark of the beast crisis comes? It's just something to think about.
That's Testimonies, Volume 5, page 81. May I ask a question? Were you going to share Genesis 47? Because if not, it's a perfect place here. Because think about this. In chapter 47 of Genesis, verse 15 through verse 22, the people had to sell their bodies to the government in order to receive a livelihood, to get food, to be able to exist. They sold their bodies. What is being promoted right now? Everything that comprise your body. It's slavery. So if we are not independent of the system and getting into that direction, if we remain paupers to the system, you will become a slave to the system. You will sell your soul, sell your bodies to the system. Think about this. All of your biometrics, voice print, everything, even your DNA, you're selling your body and soul to the government. And the end goal, lest someone say, well, that's Old Testament, chapter 47 of Genesis. Well, Revelation 18, verse 13 tells you, once they control everything, the last phrase says that they will enslave the bodies and souls of men. Marie.
Mercy. In this final segment, I think this is probably the most profound segment of all, because you're going to see how this all-encompassing system is coming together here in America, how it is identical to what they are rolling out there in China. So let's take a look at this first headline here. It says, Alaska seeks major AI overhaul of state services through My Alaska mobile app. And of course, it says the My Alaska app currently serves as a single entry point for a broad range of government services, from applying to, your benefits from the government, also to DMV records and retirement benefits. So in other words, this app that Alaska is rolling out is kind of your one-stop shop for your interactions with the government. That alone should alarm you. And the fact that in the following clips, you're going to see that this isn't isolated to Alaska, lest you think that somehow it's not going to affect you. They are setting the national standard. This is actually their testing ground. So if you're in Alaska right now, they're testing what's going to take place across the nation, nationwide. So we're going to take a listen to several clips and pay close attention to the things that they're saying about this mobile app that the government is issuing to its citizens that they have to use in order for you to interact with the government. Take a listen to the first clip.
I have a lot of feedback on this point here. Here's a clip.
Anybody want to have your digital ID linked to your financial account and linked to your good or bad citizen score? Well, good news for you. A plan is being created for a digital ID system right here in the United States. And it turns out Alaska is kind of the testing ground for it, but this is part of national infrastructure. Now, this ties in with changes being made to the state's My Alaska digital identity system, which is now being interwoven with artificial intelligence and payment functions. Great, right? And of course, this is raising concerns over potential abuses like what we see in China with very similar systems. What once functioned as a simple login for applying to the permanent fund dividend or signing state forms could soon evolve into a centralized mechanism managing identity, services, and money flows under one digital roof.
Marie.
So let's discuss this, right? He just mentioned this. This is essentially a digital ID system. And
Yes.
if you recall, the federal government had this major push where they were implementing a real ID and, of course, real ID compliant licenses, right? So that you could travel not internationally, but domestically, right? And even to be able to enter into the buildings, federal buildings. Now, remember, this was so that they could standardize driver's licenses nationwide, right? And so, of course, they're going to have all of the data from all of the states in one place. And as I mentioned, right, they're going to be layering, all of the information that we previously discussed into this same system. You can see how it's coming together, right? And again, I want to reiterate the fact that he said that Alaska is the template, right? They're the testing ground for what's going to be the national standard. And so, the other thing that I want to ask, for those of you who are familiar with what's happening in China, is this not exactly what's happening with WeChat, right? WeChat is a state-issued mobile app that contains all of your information, even your ability to be able to transact financially. And Pastor, as I'm thinking, Klaus Schwab, before he stepped down, he said that China is the model. And we didn't believe it. We didn't think that it would be incorporated here in America, but you see that it's currently happening in real time.
Let's stay right there. Klaus Schwab said what?
He said that China is the model.
It's the model, number one. And the papists themselves also confirmed that statement by saying that China is the best implementer of the Roman Catholic social teachings. Common good. And for the past several days, Marie, I've been driving home the point. The papacy and America overthrew communism in 1989. Let me sit up straight for this one. And some folks may think, wait a minute, that sounds confusing. How is it that America and the Vatican overthrew communism, right? And yet you see the principles of communism being implemented in America. How does that make sense? So let me explain that. 2 points. Number one, the papacy and apostate Protestants, of course, Satan, despise outward communism, state-sponsored atheism, because state-sponsored atheism does not give a conduit for worship. Let that sink in. Because worship, Sunday law, cannot be implemented in a system, a country that is communist. Impossible. It's state-sponsored atheism. So on the surface, they despise and they would take down communism because it hinders the mark of the beast. But watch this. But they appreciate the system of communism. Because the system of communism is all about control and removing your liberties. So now it goes hand in hand. So now they will overthrow communism, but now they will control and use a system of communism in America and around the world to augment the false system of worship. That's a nail in a sure place right there. Let me pause and bring it back in. Marie, I have more to say. Go ahead.
Right, Pastor. I mean, it makes complete sense. I mean, why else would the Vatican look at an oppressive government and somehow suggest what they're doing is good? It doesn't make any sense, right? But then, as you stated, when you understand where they're going with their policies, it makes complete sense.
That means China has to fall, period. All right. Communism China has to go under. North Korea, etc. Different topic, different date. Marie. Do you realize they always have to have a boogeyman?
Of course.
We covered the TSA earlier, right? The boogeyman is terrorism, right? Give up your rights. Trump says we must get rid of the ancient system and bring in a new one. And I said, New World Order, right? New American Order. And what was the issue there? The boogeyman is, listen, we are not getting payment transaction complete more rapidly. It's too slow. It's snail pace. Always have some reason. And now we're seeing it now with this digital ID. How many other countries are implementing it? We want everything to be in one place. Think about this. So with a flick of a switch, not even up, but down, a flick of a switch downward, boom, you are cut off from society, from travel, from employment, from transactions, from banking, from church, from DMV. That means your license won't work. You can't drive. You are with one flick of a switch downward. You are cut off because everything is in one place. It's all connected. It's called consolidation. Marie.
I was going to say, now think about this. And of course, Jesus says that, we should go from one place to another. But what they're trying to do, since all of the countries, all of the states are doing the same thing, where are you going to go? Right? Remember the 50 and 5 from the United Nations, how they're all implementing the same system. So you think, well, okay, if it starts in America, I'm going to go to Jamaica, or I'm going to go to Africa, I'm going to go someplace else. It's everywhere. And this is why we have to prepare.
Marie, continue.
Yes. So we're going to take a look at the next clip, and he's going to reiterate again that this is the testing ground and how it's going to affect us. So let's take a listen to the following clip.
Marie, and I believe people like Josh, I believe some of these folks will come into present truth in the last days. I believe it because they can see the tyrannical system being implemented, and the missing links we will provide to them. Here's the clip.
It says here, the alignment suggests Alaska's move is not isolated, but part of a broader U.S. trend toward interoperable digital identity frameworks, meaning this is just the testing ground. And the system is tied in with, it's a national program. So no matter where you are in the country, this could come to a city near you. Now, notes that observers concerned with privacy warn that such systems could evolve into a permanent cross-agency tracking infrastructure, which it basically is the one they're rolling out. It says once deployed, an AI that can act on behalf of a person also becomes capable of learning their patterns, predicting their needs, and operating continuously within government databases. And once Alaska's system moves forward, it will join a growing roster of governments weaving digital ID into the core of civic and online life. This is a global program, basically.
Marie.
He just said that this app is going to incorporate AI capabilities, right? And it's going to eventually evolve into a tracking system. And, if you really think about it, Satan has always wanted to be like God, right? Omnipresent, omnipotent, right? All knowing, right? And he wants to be able to see and control everything. Brothers and sisters, this is about as close as he is going to get. And this system really essentially does pretty much that from a digital perspective, right? The systems in a moment's notice in real time, it can determine where you are, what you're doing, how you're transacting. You know what I mean? So just I don't even know what to say, but I'm just saying everything that Satan wanted to be able to do, he's going to do in this system that's being rolled out in Alaska.
He said interoperable, keyword. Mm-hmm. If you remember, several months ago, we covered the IMF director, and she actually said that we needed a digital monetary system, an ID system that was interoperable, because if it's only different countries having their own version, we are fragmented. It must be interoperable. Beloved, that's Daniel 2. We can't have divisions and fragmentation. The iron and the clay must mingle together, be mixed together. Interoperable, global. Marie, last point. I'll bring you back in.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You're the guest. Go ahead.
Pastor, I'm just thinking, again, along that same theme, when you're saying they're interoperable, once they meld together, this gives rise to the papacy. I mean, the timing. Look at the timing of what's happening from a religious perspective. The wars. Isn't this how the papacy rose to power anciently amidst all of these things? Scary, Pastor. I'm sorry, I yield.
No. And here's a point. And on the other side of the coin, aren't they saying, watch out, we may have a cyber attack?
Mm-hmm. Doesn't make sense.
Klaus Schwab. Huh? That what? A cyber attack that will shut down every infrastructure, all institutions, all organizations, hospital, everything, banking, the whole thing shut down. Worse than the pestilence 19 pandemic. And yet everything is going digital with nothing optional. Very content. This is, just imagine when they crash everything and hit reboot.
Mm-hmm.
As if it's my iPad or my cell phone. Close it down, shut it down, refresh, reboot. A new system, mark of the beast system. Marie, continue. We're here.
And that's the only way that it would make a logical sense, right? That you would be implementing a system that is fragile, right? That can go down and can get a bug, all sorts of things, right? But you understand that they have to collapse the one system in order to reintroduce the new system. And so now we're going to take a listen to the third clip here. And he is going to show how this one app that they're rolling out in Alaska is all inclusive, all encompassing. So take a listen to this next clip.
Here it is.
There's a problem when you have all your info, all of your biometrics, your facial information, your financial information, potentially even your internet activity, your overall digital footprint. You're talking like real ID on the internet. Basically what this will do, it'll be a centralized location, all collected in the same place, monitored by an artificial intelligence system that basically sees everything. And that's the drawback of AI on this level. Nothing slips through the cracks. Having a system like this that's basically all-encompassing, all-seeing, and will automatically fine you if you step even a tiny bit out of line. That's what we're moving towards with this.
Marie, that's it.
Solemn, right? He said all biometric, all of your financial information, internet activity, your digital footprint, work history, shopping habits, your criminal record, et cetera, all of your digital IDs, which gives you access to everything, is being centralized into this singular mobile app issued by the government. That's it.
All seeing, all knowing, right?
Yes.
Ever present. All powerful, because once you see everything, know everything, you are everywhere, then that means you have all the power. In a secondary sense. This is the tyrannical system of the devil. Marie, we're here.
Right. And he said, again, that this system was going to be monitored by AI, right? And that nothing slips through the crack. That's just something that we have to emphasize. As you said, Pastor, it's all seeing, all knowing. I mean, you can see how Jerusalem, God's people are being surrounded. Lord, help us if we can't see it.
Marie, I'm going to drop 1 point. We can't delve into it, but this is going to be another nail in a sure place. And we just heard on the media that in 2026, AI will get into a sphere called singularity, which means this year AI will become smarter than human beings,
right?
And it will become autonomous. Think about that. Now think about AI deciding who can have access and who should be barred. Not humans. Who do you appeal to? AI? Hello, AI? This is merciful Father. This is how the devil is barbaric to implement such a system as draconian as this. And we're told 2026 is the year AI transcends man. AI transcends man in 2026. 2026, it becomes autonomous. I will cover that shortly. We can't get into that today. Marie.
Everything's converging at the same moment. And Pastor, we're going into our final clip here, and this is where he is essentially going to summarize where all of this is headed. He's going to outline and show you that what we are currently doing, what they're piloting here in Alaska, is the same thing that they're doing in China. So take a listen to this final clip.
Here it is.
In China, under the Chinese communist regime, basically, the social credit system gives every single person a score. Are you a good citizen? Did you wake up today and give your salute to Mao Zedong and bow down to the CCP and then go work your 996, right? 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Well, if you didn't, and if you believe in democracy or religion, or, you're unhappy with the government policy, you might get your social credit score docked. You might get a lower score. In fact, you might get such a low score that you're denied from the system entirely. If you go further into it, eventually you'll find that even apartments will not give you apartments. Go further into it and they debank you. And that's a problem because they also have digital currency. They have the digital yuan. So if you're debanked, you can't make payments. You can't buy food, you can't rent a home. And a lot of people are facing this right now in China. They're becoming homeless. There's nothing they can do. They can't use the payment system, and they're homeless. And I've been saying for a while, the new gulag, unlike under the Soviet Union where they send you off to Siberia in some frozen prison, the new gulag is you are denied the entire system itself. You can't interact with it. You're pushed out of it. And basically you're homeless, you can't buy anything, and you have to beg for food because you can't even buy a loaf of bread. That is the future gulag, and we already see it in China.
Marie.
Such sobering thoughts, right? He talked about how the social credit system there in America, and that, that's what makes their system lethal, is because when you combine all of these systems together. And see, that's what has made us unique here in America, is because all of our systems are somewhat siloed, right? And so now they're connecting everything. And we've layered that right from the very beginning: travel, DNA, history, everything, right? Your payment history. All of these things are converging into the same system. It's the exact same thing. Right. And as he mentioned, if you deviate from the system, right, one wrong move, right, if you'll be penalized. And I thought about what Sister White says in Prophets and Kings, page 184, paragraph 2. She says, human laws will be made so stringent that men and women will not dare to observe the seventh-day Sabbath for fear of wanting food and clothing. They will join with the world in transgressing God's law. This is how they will achieve their goal, of removing every earthly support, getting you hooked into the system and then turning it off.
Any closing words, Marie?
The last thing I want to say on this clip here is that I thought it was interesting that he said at the beginning that, did you wake up and bow down to the CCP? And I thought that was rather interesting, right? Because we know, in other words, did you bow down to the dictates of the government? Did you worship the government? And is that prophetic? He talked about how you're going to be debanked, right? And we know that ultimately when the Mark of the Beast law is enacted, that's what's going to happen. If you aren't in line, if you aren't doing what they say that you're supposed to do, they're going to turn you off. The last thing I'm going to say, Pastor, and this is my closing remarks, this presentation today is a canary in the mine. If you don't know what that means, years ago, they used to bring a canary into the mines when the people were mining, right? And they would do it because the canaries are sensitive to the gases that are in the mine. And they were able to alert the miners if there was some sort of gas, some sort of danger, right? And they would sound the alarm and let them know that there's danger, even though you can't see it, there's danger. And the miners would get out of the mine. Brothers and sisters, this is the canary in the mine. Everything is in place. You're seeing what's happening from a religious perspective, the global stage. You're seeing the introduction of a system that's going to prevent you from buying and selling. It literally is a matter of them turning the switch on. And then we're here. And I hope that we're going to be ready for it.
As we spoke about, my closing words, as we spoke about, this system is counterfeiting God's system. What makes God divine? He's omniscient. He's omnipresent. He's omnipotent. And we're seeing a counterfeit here. Now think about what score we must have. I'm going to make a juxtaposition, not with omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, but credit score and the 10 Commandments. It's very clear to me. To live in America, very, very soon, credit score, just as it is in China, a credit score. What is that counterfeiting? God's 10 Commandments. It's a score. God's 10 Commandments. It's a score. Everything God does, the devil and his human agents are now counterfeiting. I want to close with Luke 19, Marie, and verse 40. You had Christ's disciples and some young people were preaching. And the leader said, tell them to shut up. And what did Christ say? If these should hold their peace, even the very stones will cry out. And we don't want stones to cry out on our behalf. That's why we have come to Midday Power Surge. So safe to serve local, international, first-time viewers. Let us cry aloud and share this lesson today. Because very, very soon, we won't have this opportunity. It's very clear now. Because very, very soon, we won't be able to access YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X. We can't. Rumble. We can't. So the opportunities we have now, let's make use of it. Some will hear, others will forbear. But let us go as a witness. In verse 41, it says, as Christ beheld the city, he wept over it. Is Christ weeping right now? Why did he weep at the closing scene of his earthly ministry? Verse 42, if thou hast known, even thou at least in this thy day, the things which belongeth unto thy peace, but now they're hid from thine eyes. The day shall come upon thee, thine enemies shall make a trench about thee, and to keep thee in, compass thee round, and keep thee in on every side. Do we not see it now, friends? TSA, that's travel. Amazon, that is buying and selling online and in person. Your job, and that was JP Morgan. Business, the financial sector, JC Morgan. Wegman, that's that store in the Northeast. We are being surrounded. This tax season, federal government, digital ID, we are being surrounded and we can't see it. Verse 44, they will lay thee even with the ground and thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. And I want to make sure that there's no blood on my hand. I have given you the counsel of God, current events fulfilling end-time prophecy. And lastly, I want to be like those men from the tribe of Issachar. 1 Chronicles 12, verse 32. These were men who understood the time and what Israel ought to do. It's time to implement the 5 keys of survival. I leave it with you. Marie, that's it?
That's it, Pastor.
Let's pray. Father in heaven,